This fight was our rock bottom though, and I was a fixer. Like I bring solutions. That's what I do all the time. And that day, Jeremy, I was like, I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if she's going to be here tomorrow morning when I wake up. And that feeling of like, if I don't fix this, if I don't do something, I'm about to lose my wife and lose everything I worked so hard for.
Welcome back to Unhooked. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, and today I'm sitting down with someone whose work I've been following for a while now, and I'm really excited to have him on the show. Mitchell Osmond is a leadership coach, entrepreneur, and the founder of Dad Nation, a coaching program and podcast built specifically for high-performing men who are crushing it in their careers but struggling privately at home. Mitchell has been through his own rock bottom, and he came out on the other side with some really practical frameworks for how guys can rebuild emotional connection, show up differently in their marriages, and stop running away from the things they don't know how to face. In this episode, we get into his origin story, what's actually driving men towards disconnection and compulsive behaviors, and a really powerful framework he calls the RISE Conversation Ladder, which is a step-by-step tool for building emotional intimacy with your partner. Before we dive into the content today, big thank you to all of the new guys who joined Unhooked Academy in the last few weeks, and a huge shout out to every one of you listeners out there for supporting the show. If you want to help support the show, please make sure to subscribe and leave a review for the podcast wherever you listen. Just that one small thing really does help out a lot. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Mitchell Osmond. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Unhooked podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz. Today, here with Mitchell Osmond. Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. I'm looking forward to having this conversation, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to bring you on because you talk about a lot of topics that affect the guys that I work with. And so I know that a lot of the things we're going to speak about today are going to be very relevant and helpful for the listeners. To give people a sense of who you are, can you just give us a sense of, who you are, what you do, the work you do with men?
Yeah. Like you said, my name is Mitchell Osmond, and so I run a company called the Dad Nation, right? So I do coaching, consulting. I have a podcast called the Dad Nation Podcast. Really, what I do, Jeremy, is I help high-performing or career-driven men reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness without sacrificing their career success, right? So when I say home, I'm talking about your key relationships, like your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your kids, right? The health piece is all about nutrition, exercise, how to really optimize your health so that you're not just high functioning in, financially or vocationally, but also physically. And then the relationship piece, relationally as well in your marriage. And then the happiness piece is really just another word for our emotions, our mindset, right? So, a lot of my clients will come, they're high performing guys, dealing with a lot of pressure at work, but are cool and calm and collected. But they come home and they just like snap, and they don't know why, and they have such little patience for their wife or their kids, or they're just not the man that they want to be. And they've been successful in business. It makes sense. Everything makes sense at work. But when you come home, those rules don't apply. And it's like, I can run multi-million-dollar budgets, but I don't even know how to talk to my own wife. Like, we're distant. We feel like roommates. And so that's what I do. It could be entrepreneurs, could be white collar guys, could be whoever. But it is the common denominator is I've seen success professionally, but I'm struggling a little bit personally. Does that make sense?
1,000%. I mean, it not just makes sense for the listeners out there, it makes sense for me personally. That was my story. I had a lot of outward success, external validation and success, but inwardly I was struggling with porn addiction and all kinds of other things, emotional dysregulation. And so I think that is one of the biggest plights of modern men right now is this outward kind of, I've got it all together. I've got a good job, but inwardly not knowing how to handle some very basic things around relationships and mental health and well-being. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and it's phenomenal. So I highly recommend just at the start, anyone to go listen to the Dad Nation podcast. It's really great. I want to dive in because I know that everyone who does this work has their own origin story around it. And so I want to know, what was that moment in your life where you recognized that gap in yourself, where you maybe had it together externally, but inwardly there was something missing? What was that moment for you?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. I think it's a great place to start, Jeremy, because I have really had two turning points, okay? The first one was a fight, and the second one was a funeral. Let's start with the fight. So if you could picture, I'm sitting with my wife on the couch in our living room, and we're about 3 years into marriage, and dude, it all hit the fan. We started fighting about money, and that morphed into me not being present, that morphed into me being checked out, drinking too much, whatever. It just spiraled and spiraled from one point of tension to the next. And like I said, at this point we've been married for 3 years, and it was a hard 3 years. Like there was no first year bliss. Like we didn't have any of that, man. This fight was our rock bottom, though. And I was a fixer. Like I bring solutions. That's what I do all the time. And that day, Jeremy, I was like, I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if she's gonna be here tomorrow morning when I wake up. And that feeling of like, if I don't fix this, if I don't do something, I'm about to lose my wife and lose everything I worked so hard for. And here's what happened. My story is probably similar to yours. I was recently let go of a senior leadership position. And I says, man, our career is everything, right? Like we get judged by what we can provide, what we can do. And so we wrap our identity around it. And so I spiraled into depression. I was, within a few months, dude, I was like 60 pounds overweight. We were $100,000 in debt. I was medicating with drugs and alcohol every day. Now I was getting dangerously close to divorce, and I'm out of work. I'm out of a job. I'm like the epitome of like floundering, right? And this was the thing. I had this pivotal moment of like, after that fight, it was like, why is it that I can lead teams and I can cast vision and I can manage budgets and I was an entrepreneur and I was a part of one of the largest growing companies in the country, but I come home and I'm like, I don't know how to talk to you. It's like I'm saying blue and you're saying red. And why is this? It's like the very things that were making me powerful at work were making me powerless at home. It was brutal. And so that was the situation. And I was coming home after looking for work every day and just thinking like, is this the day that I see the ring on the counter with the note? Like it was that real. And to bring it back just real quick, Jeremy, like I was raised in a dysfunctional upbringing, right? Like I had a non-existent relationship with my father. He was an alcoholic. Drugs, crime was littered throughout my family growing up, abuse, whatever. It was ugly. And so I thought I had dealt with that. But I didn't. When I got married, that really exposed a lot of things. And what happened was I had all these wounds that were unhealed, and they just began to bleed out all into my life, all over my wife, and she paid the price. And so here I was, out of work, this position, and realizing all this stuff getting dragged up from my past because I didn't know who I was. And so I was shook. The second moment for me literally came 7 days later after the fight. This is the funeral part of the story. I was asked to sing at the funeral of this man. He was very wealthy. He was a philanthropist. And I was a professional musician on the side as well, doing gigs here and there. And so as I was strapping on my guitar, getting ready to sing the lyrics of the closing song, I'll never forget, I overheard the minister, after talking about this guy and all that he had done and all that he had contributed to his community, I overheard him ask the room, he said, are you living a life worthy of imitation? If you were to die today, would you be proud of the legacy that you left? Would there be people wanting to say, I want to live like him? And Jeremy, I knew the answer to that question. And all I could barely choke out the words to the last song, but all I could think, as I was staring at the casket of this other man, facing the legacy that he left, all I could think was, if this were my funeral, no one would want to model my marriage, my body, my finances, nothing, right? What do I have to show for this? And it was this visceral moment, man. And I went home that day just wrecked. And I'm like, I'm going to die to whatever I need to in order to become the man my wife needs, my family needs. And within, like, I got serious, dude. It was crazy. And within 18 months, I mean, I brought mentors around me, and which I can talk about a little bit later because I built some frameworks around that. But there was 4 or 5 guys who were really successful in certain of these areas. And within 18 months, we completely paid off the $100,000 of debt. I lost the 60 pounds, rebuilt my body, got clean and sober, focused, free of distractions, and most importantly, completely restored our marriage. And I was just a new man, dude, because I was always in positions of leadership, right? So people started asking questions because they were like, bro, you're on fire. Like, what's going on? How did you do this? How did you get jacked? Why is your wife so happy? Um, and so I spent the next probably 7, 8 years just helping friends of mine, right? Just lose weight and helping them reconnect with their wives and helping them building budgets and stuff, do everything. Until one of my mentors said, Mitch, if you really want to live a life worthy of imitation, if you really want to have live a beautiful legacy, you have to turn this mess into a message and share your story with the world. So I launched the Dad Nation podcast. And dude, I was just sharing just the things I've learned along the way, stories. Within about 6 months, we were in the top 10% in the world, the podcast, and we moved to the top 5%. And then, of course, I had guys reaching out all over the world just saying, hey, man, could you help me? I'm feeling it. Like, I connect with your story. And I'm a big fan of Ed Milet, and I listened to his podcast. And this was the word I needed to hear. He said, you are the most qualified to help the person you used to be. And so, Jeremy, that's all I do today is I launched a coaching practice, and since then it's been growing. I mean, it's been incredible. But that's what I do. I help the person I used to be. That high-performing man who's career-driven is just like seeing success everywhere. But the one place he can't figure it out is at home. So that's how I got here, man. A lot of pain, a lot of mistakes.
Beautiful. I love hearing that. I think it's so powerful that you have this origin story. I know I have my own origin story, and I just want to, for anyone out there listening, to just, reflect on what is your origin story. What's that? It's like a hero's journey that we go on. Yeah. And the more that you can lean into that and recognize those moments where you get called into that hero's journey of your own. And like you said, there's one thing that keeps coming up in everyone's story, which is this moment where you realize, I can't keep living like this.
Yep.
And it's all like, you had that fight, and there was this moment of, if I keep going like this, I'm going to lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such a pivotal turning point. It was for me. It's true for a lot of guys. A moment where you recognize, if I keep going down this path, I'm going to lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm miserable. And to actually be honest with yourself, to say, this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the life I'm supposed to be living. That's really powerful. I guess I'd be curious to know, because a lot of guys I work with have these moments of recognition. They say, oh man, this is really bad. I'm going to turn my life around. And they know kind of these different frameworks. They know they need to get support and be in brotherhood and start meditating and journaling and getting in touch with their emotions and avoiding these, self-sabotaging behaviors. They have all the insights and the awareness, and there are still some slips along the way. And so I'm curious for you, from that moment of the fight and the funeral to, the next, whatever it was, 12 to 18 months of turning things around. Did you have moments where you kind of dropped back in, and how did you pull yourself back onto the right path?
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a few different things. So, number one, I'm a huge words guy. I believe in the power of just just making a commitment, writing a creed. Helping you understand why you're here, what you're doing, right? So, for example, I wrote my own eulogy. And I walk my clients through this. Most of my clients, it's like, dude, if you were to die today, be honest. What would your wife say about you as she stood over your casket? What would your son say about you, about how you showed up for him, how present you were, how he felt like a priority? Would he say that? Or would they say things like, yeah, he worked a lot. We didn't actually really know him that well. Or he was kind of angry. Or yeah, I mean, he paid the bills, but he was never really, he was on his phone a lot. Would they say that? Or would they say, yeah, we were the most important thing in his life? And so begin with the end in mind. That was the first thing I did. And this is not a new concept. Stephen Covey wrote about this in chapter 2 in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind, right? Napoleon Hill, begin with the end in mind. Alfred Nobel's story, which I don't know if you've heard, is nuts. But again, he got a glimpse of the legacy he was leaving. That was my story. I was legit I was faced with my mortality vicariously through another man, and I had this flash forward of what does the end of my life look like? Overweight, probably an alcoholic, alone, miserable. And so what I did was I wrote out my eulogy, and then I actually read it to my wife. Is this true? Would you say this about me right now? And then I wrote the 2.0. If I was every bit the man that I know that I could be, if I doubled down, what would they say then? And so what you got then is your current reality and where you want to be. right? The man you are and the man you know you could be. And so right between these two things, that everything in that gap, that's where your tension, that's where your anxiety, that's where your frustration lies. Because you wake up every day knowing that you could be better if you just doubled down. So number one, I got clearer. I wrote my eulogy and I posted it up, and I would read it, bro, like once a week. Just being reminded of who I am becoming. Second thing was I surrounded myself with 5 men, and I created a framework around it's called the Iron 5. Now, I just did it organically, but now my clients have their own Iron 5 because it was so profound. Because I just thought about the areas of my life where I need help. I needed help in my marriage. I needed help in my fitness, in my finances, right? My emotions. And so I literally just reached out. There was a guy I knew. So my first job I got after all this went down, I was like a laborer, dude. And it was a far drop from where I was before. And this guy had multiple properties. He rolls up in his Porsche, and I'm literally carrying bricks out of his house, right? And I just, dude, I don't know what came over me, man. I just walked up to him. I'm like, hey, Richard, you have done very well, and I have a lot of respect for you. I'm in a rough place right now, but I really want to be better. You know, we're in debt, and I just want better for me and my wife and my family. Would you be willing to meet me for like once a month just for coffee, or I'll buy you a beer? Could you just mentor me financially? Just give me some simple principles. It would mean the world to me. And dude was like, absolutely, 100%. Where, you just tell me when and where, and I'm there. This guy's high level. And I did the same thing. And I thought about my life, like, who is the best marriage that I know of? Boom, I talked to him. Who's the most jacked dude I know? And I talked to him. And guess what? Every single one of them were humbled and honored and said, Mitch, I'd love to help you. And so those men rallied around me. And the reason why that's so important is because even if they never said anything, their life, the way they live, it's like my ceiling was their floor. Where I ended, where I thought was the most, is where they just began when they wake up. And so their life literally was just an example. It was a scope that showed me what was possible. So yeah, I saw more than I ever would have seen on my own, but they also gave me those principles, and they also checked in and was like, hey man, are you loving your wife? Are you dating your wife? Did you eat the cheeseburgers, or did you have the salad? Did you get your ass in the gym today? What did you do? So it was this piece of total clarity through the eulogy, and then really strong accountability. Guys, I mean, these guys wouldn't let me, even if I wanted to, and I did, right? I screwed up. I was a jackass to my wife. I was, all those different things, but they held me accountable, and they taught me how to work out of those rhythms and those mindsets that I lived in, right? Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. And man, I'm getting goosebumps. There's so many parallels. Like, you and I don't know each other. I don't know your program, but it's so fascinating how many parallels there are to your approach and my approach. Like in my course, literally the first lesson in my course, Unhooked, starts with that quote, "Begin with the end in mind" by Stephen Covey. And the very first exercise I have guys do in my program is almost to a T the same as yours. We map out the default future, which is where you're headed if you don't make a change. And they get real clear on what that eulogy would look like. What would the end of their life look like if they don't make a change? Mm-hmm. And then the next exercise after that is, what's the dream future? If you are living your highest self, living your best life, what does that actually look like? And it's exactly that, seeing the disparity between where you're headed now if you don't make a change, what kind of life you're leading, and where you'll be at the end of your life, and what you truly desire, what you really aspire to be. Seeing the difference between those two it gives you fuel and gives you energy. And it's such an important thing. And I just want to highlight that like, for any guy out there listening, to do some form of this exercise, some form of figuring out where you're headed if you don't change your life, if you keep up with these self-sabotaging habits and behaviors and mistreating the people in your life and not being present. What does that look like when you're 70 years old? And then, as you said, to surround yourself with people who are crushing it in the ways that you want, people who are living a good life and have a good marriage and are taking care of their bodies. It's so important to identify those people and keep them in mind, because it gives you that North Star, reminds you of what's possible. Mm-hmm. So I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. I'm glad to know that that there's so much alignment, and that for me, that's validating. It tells me that we're heading in the right direction. But here's the thing, man. So many of these principles apply in business. It's like you want different outputs, change your inputs. And
Yeah.
you think that if you don't change your inputs that you're going to get something different on the outputs? No, that's not the way it works, right? We know that our lives are a direct result of the decisions we've been making over the past 3 to 5 years. So Jeremy, if I think about the decisions I was making when I was in 2021 to 2023, yeah, makes total sense as to why I'm right here right now. Perfect. It's very clear. Now, if I like where I am, awesome. Keep doing the same thing. But if I don't like where I am, then perhaps I should start making different decisions, learning how to think differently, learning how to decide differently. Because if I don't, in 3 to 5 years from now, so 2029, 2031, life's going to look the same, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if you don't change your inputs, your outputs won't change. But this is what happens. And we know, sorry, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to like neuroscience, but we know that 95% of the decisions we make every single day happen on autopilot, right? That only 5% of the decisions that we make every single day are conscious level decisions. What does that mean? We live on autopilot. The vast majority of our days are completely we go to the same coffee shop, we take the same roads to work, we say hi to the same people, we go to the same barber shop. You know what I mean? We check the same notifications. We're creatures of habit. So this is why we wake up a year later and everything looks the same, because we live 95% of our lives on autopilot. This is why we need to get around other men who are living differently to challenge the way we think, to challenge the decisions we make, and to be honest. Guys who are going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Because here's the problem. Half the guys, I would say far more than half the guys in my community, the very reason why they got there is because they surrounded themselves with people who tell them what they want to hear. That makes sense because it's comfortable, right? We want people to tell us what we want to hear. Also, those people want to tell you what you want to hear because you're a leader and they're not going to be honest with you. And so a lot of these guys, the positions they're in is kind of like a vacuum where no one is truly uncomfortably honest. And so it's so refreshing when you can get around a community of men who's like, hey, I'm not going to pad you. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And this is what it is. That's how you change, right? So I'm with you, dude.
Yeah. Man, so many little things I want to highlight. Start with the end. The power of community and surrounding yourself with people who will challenge you is such an underrated thing. Actually, it was the last podcast of yours I listened to was just on, the lone wolf doesn't work. Like you need to be surrounded by other men who will challenge you and hold you accountable. And it's one of the most valuable things that most guys are missing. Most guys want to isolate because it's easier, it's comfortable, it's not challenging. But the thing that puts your life on, gives it fuel for just getting to that next level is surrounding yourself with the right people who challenge you and call you out and shine a light on the things you'd rather not look at. So I think that's beautiful. Other thing I really want to highlight is what you said earlier about recognizing, and this was a pivotal moment for me. For me, it came through recognition of karma and understanding what karma really is. It's not this kind of spiritual nonsense. It's really just understanding that everything you do has consequences.
Yeah.
And everything that exists today is because of the causes and conditions that came before it. So every part of your behavior and your personality is because of the decisions you made in the past that fortified and solidified that sense of self in the present. And it gives you, when you really understand that, it helps you see clearly that you are the owner of your actions. And that if you want different outcome, you have to put in different inputs, as you say. Yeah. And there's no way around it. You can't just hope for a better future without actually changing your actions in the present. And so I think that highlights how important taking ownership is. I'm curious, for you, you said one thing that I think was really interesting. You said many men aren't lacking discipline. They're applying it in the wrong areas. And I'm curious to know, what are they disciplined about and what are they avoiding?
Yeah, they're disciplined in things that they can control, right? So you can control your close rate for the most part, right? You can control your revenue over the next quarter by, developing your sales teams. You can control so many things because we're solutions oriented. We're solutions based. We're strategic thinkers. We're very logical. We're very analytical. We're very driven that way. We're driven by performance. It's awesome, and we're really good at it, right? And those are the things we become very disciplined in. You can control even fitness, like you can control that. You can't control your wife. You can't control your girlfriend. You cannot control your 2-year-old, right? So what happens? Oh, wait a minute. I can't, when I do this at work, this makes sense, right? But when I come home, you don't fit the mold, right? And so this is what happens is guys, these high performing guys, they try to use the same frameworks at home. And what happens is they start treating their family like employees, right? Being overly assertive, giving too much direction, being logical, analytical. Hey, listen, guess what? If you're dating a woman, if you're married to a woman, they are not logical creatures, right? They're emotional. They're driven by intuition. They don't really care about logic that much. And if they are, there's a chance that they have a slightly like masculine side. That's fine. But the problem is when you come home and she starts talking about, I had a fight with, my friend, or my sister came over and I can't believe she said this thing and I'm exhausted. The kid's been driving me crazy. So what do? You're like, okay, game on. Let me fix her problem, right? Let me give her a solution. And so you bring logic. It's like, oh, this is good. This is good. She's going to love this, right? Because I'm going to give her this framework on how to have this conversation with her sister. And she's like, well, what are you talking about? I don't want that. I just want you to hear me. I just want you to listen. I don't want you to fix it, right? And what happens? So here's the thing, Jeremy. A man's 2 greatest needs are to feel competent and to feel respected. It's actually not to feel loved. Now, that's important. But like I've done this before. You go into a room of 1,000 guys and you ask the question, would you rather hear the words, I love you or I respect you from your partner? 95% of the guys are going to lift up their hand and say, I would rather them say, I respect you. When I talk to women or when I'm on women-driven podcasts, I'll usually say to them, the most empowering thing you can say to your partner, if they're a male, is, I believe in you. You're an incredible dad. You're an incredible husband. You're such a hard worker. You're an amazing leader. Like that goes miles, way more than I love you, right? Why is that? Because we're hungry to feel competent and feel respected. So what happens is we come home and we do the thing that we've been doing all day. We bring a solution because let's be real, we get paid well to do that. We're great at it. And then she says, well, no, I don't want you. You're not listening, right? And then what do we feel? We feel incompetent, right? We feel, and she might even say things that might feel a little bit disrespectful. So what do you say? Well, whatever. You asked me, and I did my thing. I did my song and dance. If this works at home or this works at work, why doesn't it work with you? You don't make sense. I'm out, right? And they get frustrated. And then the wife, has needs to feel loved and cherished and supported, doesn't necessarily feel loved and cherished because you don't want to love her. You don't want to cherish her because now you're pissed off, right? So what happens is the guy goes back to the areas where he feels the most competent and respected, which is where? At work, right? Where he gets the attaboys, where he gets the performance bonuses, where he's employee of the month, where he makes partner. Okay, great. Well, that makes sense. So what happens? He stays at work longer. Because that's easy. He's more comfortable there. But then he's not necessarily home to emotionally nurture and pour into this relationship with his wife, emotionally speaking, connecting with her. So what happens? She gets her emotional needs met through other areas as well, like the kids, right? Or other friendships or relationships. And this is what we call the drift, right? And so guys just give up. Like, I don't understand you, right? And so this is why they can't figure it out at home, because it's a totally different set of rules, right? And they might even get to a situation where they plan a date and they go out for a date and the date just feels like a staff meeting with alcohol. You know what I mean? Because you point up a glass of wine, but what are you doing? You're talking about the schedule. You're talking about the kids. Oh, we got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. And it's like, this is just a staff meeting. This is just an agenda. This is not a date. We're not connecting because you don't know how, right? And then they wonder why they're drifting. There's literally no time. There's no point when they connect on that emotional level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 100%. Something I hear from a lot of the guys that I talk to. I guess, where this is leading me is to get kind of practical on what can guys do if they find themselves in that situation. Because I know a lot of guys listening to this recognize that slow drift. They recognize, hey, I'm killing it in the boardroom, but when I get home, I don't know how to put A and B together. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense and it's not working. And I don't feel competent at home in terms of having discussions and communicating, and it just doesn't seem to work. And so I'm curious, are there exercises you have guys do? Is there advice that you have for people who find themselves in that situation?
I'm so glad you asked. Because I have a framework that I'd love to teach your listeners that's going to help with this, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
But first of all, before I get there, let me give you some statistics and some data to really back this up. We know in the U.S. today, up to 70% of divorces are initiated by the women in the relationship. Now, when you look at the data even further, in high-income households, especially where the wife is a high earner, has a high level of education, that number jumps to 90%. So in some situations, in our target demographic, right, high-performing men, high-income households, 9 out of every 10 divorces are initiated by the women. Now, what's crazy is when you dig into the data and understand the main reason why they initiate the divorce, it's not what everyone thinks it is. It's not like sex, money, kids, none of cheating. It is some variation of emotional disconnection. I didn't feel like a priority to him. He didn't listen. We didn't connect emotionally. Now, why is that? What did I just say a few minutes ago? Women are emotional creatures. They could care less about connecting about, your strategy or your plan or your solution. They want to be connected with an emotional level. So those statistics are very important to understand. 80% of the time in a situation where 9 out of 10 times the divorce is initiated by the women, that's a blaring red flag. Like, we got to pay attention to that. Now, what's the next piece to this? It's universally known that men struggle. What's the biggest struggle for men? Emotional connection, emotional intelligence, right? Psychologists have a term for this. It's called normative male alexithymia, which is a bit of a mouthful, but let me unpack it for you. So the word alexithymia, translated from the Greek, is alexis thymos, which means a lack of words for emotions. So if we put all that together, normative male alexithymia, it's normal for a male to be without words for his emotions. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, let's take it back to the stats. 80% of the time, what's the problem? Why does she leave? Emotional disconnection. What's the biggest problem guys have? Generally speaking, emotional connection, emotional intelligence. Well, voila, we have our problem, right? And so what do? This is where we do the work. If you're married or if you're in a long-term relationship or whatever, you got to learn how to connect with them on an emotional level, because also that's the key to physical intimacy. She's not interested in opening up physically if you're not connecting with her emotionally. That's just the rule of the game, right? And so I got something called the RISE conversation ladder. And this is how you can think about it as steps leading to that connection with her that she craves the most, right? That emotional connection. And it's an acronym, RISE. And are you okay if I teach it to them?
Yeah.
All right.
Go for it. This is great.
I'm talking a lot, man. So just jump in if I'm talking too much. I'm just really passionate.
Well, let me, before you teach it, because something that's come to my mind is this, as you say, the emotional intelligence is one of the biggest things guys struggle with. And it's not just important for connecting with your partner. It's important for connecting with yourself. I mean,
yes,
the emotional intelligence component is one of the most important things for dealing with porn addiction or any compulsive behaviors when you're running away from your emotions because you don't want to feel them. You don't know how to be with loneliness or boredom or sadness or anything. You're not even aware that it's there. Just on autopilot, you feel, oh, this is uncomfortable. Let me get away from it. Then you run into your addiction. And so what you're about to teach is not just beneficial for, healing your connection with your partner, but it's also first and foremost for connecting with yourself so that you can have that emotional awareness of what's going on within your own system so that you don't have to run away from it. So, all right, go ahead and teach it out. I'm excited for it.
And I'll bolt on a couple other things. This also works for your children as well, because your children desperately need your attention and your affection. And so if you're cold, if you're numb, they feel that, right? And let's talk about work. You want to be favored and liked by your employees or your staff. you learn how to connect with them and check in, not too intense, but just like a little bit, to be more emotionally available, to like just to let them know you're cheering for them, you support them, and all those different. It's going to translate not just personally, but in a big way professionally as well. So it's huge. Okay, so the most basic level of conversation here is R. That stands for routine, right? So you think about this as the first step. This is the small talk that runs the house, okay? But it never really gets to any emotion, never really gets to the heart. So questions at the routine level are things like, what time are you home, right? Did you pay the water bill? What's for dinner? Who's driving the kids, right? But here's the thing. Your relationship with your wife or your kids is not an operations department, right? It's not the way it works. You have to connect on a deeper level. And so routine is important. It is important because it's details, but it shouldn't stop there. It doesn't mean intimate, right? What we're looking for is intimacy. So we don't confuse daily updates with daily connection, because that's not connection, right? That's just update. So the second level to this is I for information. Now, this is where you move from transactions to facts about your world. This is kind of like where you swap news headlines of your day, right? So information-based questions are like, what happened at work? Not what time are you home from work? What happened at work? What did the teacher say at that parent-teacher meeting? What did your mom want when she called, right? How did that project wrap up, right? So you can see what you're just pressing a little tiny bit more, but it's actually just still information. Now, it's better than nothing, but at the end of the day, you're still just reporting the news. You're not connecting emotionally. And here's the thing. This part is where most guys fall off the map. Most guys are pretty good at routine level questions, information-based questions. And there's a reason why. But the next step is S for story. This is where the walls start to crack open, because the story-based questions move beyond what happened to how it impacted you, okay? It pulls emotions into those facts. This is where real trust and empathy grows in your relationship. So story-based questions are another level deeper. So it would be like, hey, how did that meeting make you feel? How did you feel when you walked? Were you anxious? Were you excited? Were you sad? Were you frustrated? Right? What was the hardest part of your day today, babe? And what was a moment where you just like, you chuckled at a colleague, or were you ever frustrated? Or tell me a little bit more about that, right? I love this question. What do you wish I understood better about what you're dealing with right now? Right? So this is where the reason why we struggle with this, Jeremy, is because you got to drop your guard. And you're asking her to drop her guard. But here's the problem. She's going to start talking about her emotions. But what's the problem with that? Well, number one is we can't fix it, right? If she says she's had a hard day or she's really frustrated, well, now you're like, well, why? How do I fix that? What do I do? What, you know? It's not for you to fix, right? But this is why men don't even go here. And this is just the third level. You just have to say to yourself, I'm not here to fix whatever she's feeling. I'm simply just here to listen and to hear them, right? And I'll park here for a moment to give you an analogy that I think that a lot of people might connect with. When you come home and you're talking to your partner, and they're talking, say for example, my wife is like talking about maybe, you know, she got in a fight with with her sister or something. Like, bro, it's like we were standing in front of a house, our house, and it's up in flames. When she asked me not to do anything about it, it's like we're just standing there watching the house burn. I got a fire hose, right, fully charged up, ready to go. I'm like, hey, babe, you want me to put out the fire? Want me to take it to the fire? She's like, no. We're just gonna sit here and watch it burn. Like, inside, that's the feeling. It's like, what? Do you really just want me to sit here and listen to you complain about this? But that is the solution. That is the way forward for her, right? So a great question to ask her, if you get to this story-based level and she starts talking about her emotions, is, hey, babe, real quick, before we jump into this too far, is this something where you just want me to listen? Or do you want me to help you create a solution? Do you want me to help you fix this? And she's going to be like, yeah, no, I don't want you to fix this. I just need you to listen. And then you're like, game on. All right, cool. Pressure's off. Let me listen to you talk about your day, right? But she also might say, yeah, you know what, babe? Actually, that you said that, I would like a solution. And then it's like, okay, it's go time. Right now, I'm going to give. But either way, when you get that clarity from her, number one, it says, hey, I'm listening. I'm interested. I'm curious. But number two, it gives you the roadmap. So you're not trying to solve a problem that she didn't ask you to fix, right? Which ends up, eliminating a potential fight, mitigating risk, right? Okay, so last step is RISE. This is essence E. And this is where emotional intimacy really is born. Okay, if you want to get physical with your wife, then you ask questions like this, dude, something's gonna unlock. And essence is about meaning. This is the inner world where very few people get invited into. This is where her fears live. This is where her deepest questions live. Her dreams live. So examples of essence-based questions are, what's been on your mind lately that you haven't said out loud? What's been on your heart lately, right? Maybe what dream keeps tugging at you that you wish we would talk about more? Or I love this question. What is one thing that you would like us to do, be, or see in the next 5 years, right? What do you want us to do? What do you want us to be? Who do you want us to be? What do you want us to see, right? And it opens up this beautiful chance to dream and think and laugh and, about the future or whatever. The beautiful thing about this is she will open up and feel like you're truly listening. And there's no agenda, right? But the problem is when you say, hey, what's a dream that you haven't said out loud? What's something that you've always been dreaming about, but you haven't told me about? Problem is she might say, well, I've always wanted to live on this acreage with a nice big house and a white picket fence. Whoa, 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 whoa. Well, we can't afford that. Well, what is that going to mean for, I got to make partner. I got to get this. What are you talking about? Why you want that? You didn't say that. And all of a sudden, we start trying to fix it. What? And this is why this is a dangerous zone. So the risk is real, but so is the payoff, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to be able to listen to her dreams. You got to be able to listen to her feelings and just embrace it and just be like, these are just dreams, and let her talk, right? And so if you can walk through that framework, dude, I mean, she's just, and Jeremy, I've had women actually contact after the guys have figured this out, and they've been like, who was that man who was talking to me last night before bed? Because I hadn't seen him since we were dating 30 years ago. It's truly, it really is powerful. So that's how you can kind of walk through it. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah. And I guess what's coming to mind for me is I imagine that the quality, as you're talking about this, especially as you get to the S and the E, the kind of the story questions and particularly the essence, you can ask a question, but the quality of your presence and the quality of your genuine curiosity and patience and non-defensiveness, just like the quality of your presence almost matters more than the question itself. Because I can imagine a situation where you've got that written down on a piece of paper and you say, okay, Mitchell said, okay, I need to ask you, what's a dream that you have that, but it's are you genuinely able to drop into openness and curiosity and presence while you're asking that? And that's probably what makes the difference. What, as you said, allows you to access that secret space that isn't usually shared with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the big caveat. If you haven't figured it out yet, you should not have your phone in your hand while you're asking these questions. The TV should not be turned on. All right? Nothing. I'm talking pour a glass of wine, sit down, turn the lights down, and just check in, Here's an example, okay? Maybe you're winding down at the end of the day. A routine level question, like the basic level, is what time do we need to be up tomorrow? Or what time do we need to leave the house tomorrow? Okay? Very simple. An information-based level question, the next one would be something like, hey, what's on our schedule that I need to know about for tomorrow, right? Again, information. You're swapping headlines, whatever. The story-based question is, what are you feeling? Like, is there anything you're feeling nervous about tomorrow? Or is there anything you're excited about tomorrow? Tell me a little bit. Again, you're bringing in the emotions, right? And then the essence piece is, what's something that's been weighing on you that I can just support you in, or I can sit with you in, or what's something that you're just carrying that you can just talk to me about. That's it, right? And she is just going to unravel. But here's the thing. David White is a poet, a philosopher. He says this all the time. The conversation is the relationship. The conversation is a relationship. What? I say this all the time, man. You want to know the quality of your marriage or your relationship? Look at the quality of your conversation, right? What's the quality of the conversation with your kids? Are you not having conversations with your kids? You probably don't have much of a relationship with them. If you're not actually going to any depth in your relationship with your wife, well, your marriage doesn't have a whole lot of depth. And that's why she doesn't want to sleep with you, because you're not going anywhere emotionally with her. That is the sauce. That is the secret. When my wife said to me, I just want to talk for the sake of talking. Bro, I'll never forget. Like, I laughed out loud. Like, what do you mean? You just want to talk in circles? Like, there's no agenda here? It's like, I just want to connect with you. That blew my mind. I'm like, so we're just going to talk? Right? But for me, in this like corporate world, very high paced, driven, it's like everything has an agenda, everything has a goal. It's like, oh, you just want to aimlessly walk around and aimlessly talk. I couldn't wrap my head around it. But when I did, oh, dude, something unlocked. Because she's like, oh, I got him back. He's here again. Just like when we were dating. Because you think about it, right? What do you do when you're dating? Bro, when me and my wife were dating, I went and bought like a blanket and a stereo, went up on this beautiful hill. We stayed up, talking till the sun came up. I was exhausted. I didn't care, right? Those things you did when you're dating. And what happens? You get married or you get into a serious relationship. It's like, boom, psych. And all that stuff stops. And they feel duped, right? So, yeah, I feel like I'm kicking a horse. But that's so critical. So I hope that helps your listeners.
Yeah. I want to dive into something that's a little more specific and will really be helpful for a lot of the guys listening to this show, which is if there's been betrayal in a relationship, if there's been some hiding or secrecy, where maybe a guy has had something like a porn addiction, has kept it from his wife, and there has been some betrayal or lack of trust in the relationship. Now, what can a man do to help rebuild trust when there has been betrayal? Are there certain things? Because I imagine you see that in your work often, where there is some lack of trust or lack of connection there. What are some things that can help rebuild trust after betrayal in a marriage?
I'm gonna say some things, and some of your listeners won't like it, just for the record, and I'm okay with that. But I get in trouble for this all the time. First thing, and I'd actually be curious to hear your situation, because you're the expert, and deception, and pornography and all that stuff. But the first thing that I get my clients to do, well, number one, what got us there in the first place? The secrecy, right? Something in the dark, something that you were hiding. So what's the antidote? Antidote to that? No secrecy, right? No hiding, complete transparency. So what does that mean? Hey, babe, here's my phone. Here are my passcodes. Here's everything. Here's every password to my websites. Check it out whenever you want. I don't care if you ever do, but just so you know, you can see it all. From the moment me and my wife got married, we gave each other everything. And bro, in 10 years, we have never once, not one time, have we ever had even a disagreement about like porn or exes or relationships or people online or DMs or anything like that. Because there's complete trust. There's complete trust because there's complete transparency, right? So number one is that, and that's what my guys do, because I'm hardcore, right? Like, I'm really hardcore. And so it's like, if we're not serious about this, then don't become a part of this program, right? And this is what it means. The second thing, which also a lot of people don't agree with me on, is don't make your wife your accountability partner. Don't make her have to keep looking at your browser history. Don't make her have to be the one to ask you, hey, did you look at porn again? Right? Don't make her the one that has to obsess about, did he do it tonight? You know what I mean? Remember, she's not designed to handle that kind of weight. You are, right? And so this going back to the community piece, going back to the brotherhood, going back to the accountability, is like, you have to have a tribe, right, that you can go to and be like, guys, I slipped up. I did this. Okay, that's fine. Okay, how do we get back on the horse, right? Or whatever. And you can let your wife know when something has happened. But don't make her like constantly check in and be asking you constantly, hey, did you do this? Did you turn on your browser protector or whatever, safeguards. Why? Because then what happens? The dynamic shifts in your relationship. The polarity shifts, and you go from husband and wife to mother and child, because now she's parenting you, because she's checking everything and she's helicoptering. Oh, is he okay? Did he look at porn to do this, to do this? And now all of a sudden she's got another kid she's got to look after, because she's constantly thinking about him. And that's more mental load on her that she didn't ask for, right? And so for me, it's like, yeah, you have to be honest with her about that. But she's not going to be the person that you got to like constantly talk about it. It's going to kill her, right? What you should do is have your community of men and then talk to them about that. And then check-ins with her like once every week, couple weeks, whatever the rhythm is for you guys. But bro, the moment, and I see it all the time. And then the woman becomes the parent. And a woman, and this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but when a woman becomes the parent in this marriage, no parent wants to sleep with their kids. You know what I mean? Like, you got that dynamic going on. She's not going to want to sleep with you because you feel like a child, right? And so that's the reality. It's like, no, I got to be a man. I got to own my business, right? We got to get that polarity. I got to step into my masculine energy. She's got to step into her feminine energy, so we get that attraction back, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and there's obviously there's way more to it than that, but those are the two big pillars that I work on with my guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think component of that first piece, which is complete transparency and openness, I think a component of that is to just make sure you're living in integrity. That it's much easier to be transparent and open and honest and give them your phone with all the passwords if you're actually living in integrity and walking on a path of integrity. If you're continuing to act out, then of course, there's going to be a lack of trust, and it's going to be hard to heal from betrayal. And so that integrity part is the most important.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the freedom that comes with that. Dude, I tell people all the time, I don't have the capacity to manage two lives. I don't got time for that. I don't got the energy for that, And the freedom that you get from just like having nothing to hide to anyone, is like, hey, come look, pull back the curtains, do whatever you want. I got nothing to hide. It's absolute. It's so liberating, and it is the best feeling in the world, because I know what it's like to live with secrets. I've done it before, right?
Yeah.
It's just so, and then the way you show up. Let's take it back to the business. The way you show up as a business leader, when you're dialed in your marriage, and she's attracted to you, and you feel like the man, and she desires you, she respects you, your kids love you, you're the superhero, you're in shape, you're just like, you got no secrets. You're like, I'm authentic. I'm a man of my word. I'm confident. The way you show up in the workplace is completely different then, right? That's why all this stuff is so important.
Yeah, there's a concept, what you just talked about there, the freedom that you feel when you have nothing to hide. There's a concept I talk about often that I love, and a lot of the listeners love. It's called the Bliss of Blamelessness. It comes from Buddhist philosophy, but this feeling of blamelessness, when you know that you're living in integrity and you're living an ethical life and you haven't harmed anyone, you're not cheating, there's a bliss of blamelessness that you can feel. And it's a greater feeling than any other kind of sense pleasure, knowing that you're living a good life and that you have nothing to hide. You can walk down the street with your head held high, and there's that absolute inner freedom of knowing that you're a good person. And like you said, the respect, that's what we really crave most as men, is that kind of respect. And that's, I think, what we really need, just to be able to not have to hide anything or feel like we're living a double life. It's so important. And that's what we really crave, that bliss of blamelessness.
Yeah. And, in my experience with working with clients, a lot of times the reason why they fall into, whether it's an actual physical affair with another woman, or an emotional affair, or pornography addiction, is because they don't feel that respect at home. They feel powerless. They don't feel competent, and they crave it more than anything. And so when you're looking at porn, or like you feel like you get control back, I can turn this on whenever I want. I could turn it off. I get what I want. I leave. I'm the man, right? Or that girl at work, that secretary, or the administrator, whatever, or the colleague that's working side by side with you on that project. And she's like, man, you must be a great husband. All she's got to say is something, I bet you're a great dad, right? Again, what is that? Respect, competency. You're like the strongest leader in this whole division. It's incredible. What is that? Feed. Boom. You're getting your needs met. Of course you're going to start sleeping with her because you're not getting it at home, right?
Mm.
And so that's why it's so important to have these conversations with our partners. And to be honest,
Mm.
and we didn't
Mm-hmm.
talk about this, but a woman's greatest three needs, I call it the attraction triangle. And I did an episode on this a while back, and I won't go into the details, but at the end of the day, a woman needs to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel safe. We could unpack those in lots of different ways, but at the end of the day, if that's what she needs, and you know that you need to feel respected and competent, if you just sit down with her and have a raw, honest, open conversation, and you say to her, hey, honey, what does it look like to make you feel more seen in our home? What does it look like to make you feel more heard? How can I be better at that? What does it look like to make you feel more safe with me in this house, in this family? And I'm talking emotionally safe, not just physically safe, relationally safe, financially safe, But if you can have that conversation and then she asks you, hey, honey, how can I make you feel more respected? How can I make you feel more competent as a man, as a leader, as a husband, as a father? And if you start actually answering those questions honestly and start living out of that, dude, your marriage could turn around in a week. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
I love that. I love the two-way street there of your wife asking you, hey, how can I help you feel more competent and more respected? Leaning into what the man needs, and then you as the man asking your wife, how can I help you feel more seen, more loved, more safe, all these things. And what's coming to me is how important, you're a coach, I'm a coach. We know the importance of what we call powerful questions.
Yes.
And a great sign of a powerful question is it's open-ended. There's no right answer or wrong answer. And a really great sign of a powerful question is it gets the person who you're asking, it gets them to stop and think. They don't have an immediate answer. If it's a simple question, a routine question or information question, what time do we need to get up? 8 a.m. Okay. There's no stopping and thinking. But if you say, what can I do to help you feel more safe?
Mm-hmm.
She's going to stop and think and say, I don't know, because she doesn't know and you
Mm-hmm.
don't know. And so she has to actually stop and think and say, yeah, what can you do to help me feel more safe and more seen and more loved? And so, for the guys out there listening, pick up a coaching book and learn how to ask powerful questions, because it's the most important thing you can do for your relationships is learning how to be genuinely curious, ask powerful questions, and really be present for the person. It's not just great for your partners, it's great for your friends, for your clients, for your employees, for everyone. So
Actually, you know what? While
yeah.
you're there, if you don't mind, I'd love to give your listeners a free gift. That's exactly what you're talking about, the power of great questions. Is that okay?
Mm. Yeah.
So I've got something called the connection code. All right. And it's literally designed, like, remember all those statistics I was talking about, and man's, struggling to connect with their wives emotionally, all that stuff. Well, I created this list of 50 questions, and they are strategically designed to connect with your wife on an emotional level and help her unravel that way. And in that guide, there's questions, different categories, like just for fun and leisure. Like, it's like a simple one would be like, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? Or like, I love one of my favorite questions in that section is, explain to me the perfect day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. What is it? Go. The beautiful thing about that question is you got lots of notes, right? Because she can tell you exactly what that looks like. But then there's questions about like her dreams, and there's questions about passion and intimacy and sex and stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff, and it's really juicy. But that's all I tell guys is, hey, download that, and just, whether you're going out on a date, just pull 2 or 3 questions off the page, something that you feel comfortable asking, and you work your way into it. Or maybe you don't go out, maybe you put the kids down, you pour up a glass of wine, take 2 or 3 questions off the page, and just go for it. And she's just gonna be like, what? I can't remember the last time the only thing you ever asked me was, how was work? How are the kids? How'd you sleep? Dead end, right? And you'll see her eyes light up. And again, I've had women email me the next day and been like, who was that man that took me out on a date last night? Because some of those questions he asked me, it's like the same thing with the Rise conversation ladder. It just gets you out of the norm. It gets you out of that rut. Because like I said, 95% of the decisions we make are the same. We ask the same questions. We think the same thoughts. So this is something that can get you out of that rut. And so if you go to dadnationcode.com/code, it's my website /code, you can download for free, or I'll give the link to you and you can put it in the show notes. But use it. I mean, it's my gift to you and you're listening today to say thank you for listening to me ramble on for so long.
Amazing. Well, I know this will be super helpful for a lot of the guys. I mean, so much of what my guys struggle with is that connection in their relationship, and it leads to a lot of the acting out with porn and
Exactly.
escapism. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And because you're not connecting, you don't feel safe talking about what you feel and what you need and your desires and your needs, and that's what she wants, right? But we don't do it. We withdraw, we hold back because we don't want to feel weak, or we don't want to feel vulnerable, or we don't want her to judge us for what we want or what we think. And it's
Yeah.
that very thing that causes that spiral. And that's the thing she wants the most, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Beautiful, man. Well, I guess final question for you is, where can people learn more about you, the work you do, your podcast, everything?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Jeremy. If you just go to my website, dadnationco.com, you'll see everything there. I mean, the podcast is there. Links to my coaching programs are there. There's a ton of free resources there. Like there's a bunch of stuff that I didn't even mention here that you could get for free. So you can check that out. Honestly, that's the best place. And if you forget what the name is, just Google me. You'll see my face plastered around everywhere. Mitchell Osmond, Dad Nation. And I would love to connect. You know, whether it's you just want to just talk to me about where you're at in your marriage, or you want some extra tips, or if you want to explore what it looks like to start a coaching relationship and turn your life around, not just in your marriage, but in your fitness, in your mindset, in your emotions. You want to pack on some muscle. You want to learn how to keep your cool, right? All those different things. And yeah, let's have a conversation. But other than that, yeah, I'm just happy to serve in whatever way I know how. And I hope this conversation resonated with you and your listeners, brother.
Amazing. Thanks for so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. All right, folks, that's it for today. Another episode of Unhooked. We'll see you guys on the next episode.